Hey, good morning, folks. Nice day today, Tuesday, in June, a few days away from my birthday. I just thought I'd come out. It's early morning. Guy there just finished doing his lawn, so you have a little bit of peace and quiet for a while. The train's passed, so you guys can hear me without trouble. Anyway, I had this memory about a branch at the cottage. I know that sounds ridiculous. Why would I want to talk about a branch? But it's a multi-memory story. It goes across all sorts of periods in my life, this branch. So the story starts, my dad's cottage, when I was a kid, in my teens. He was in Farrelton, Farrelton in Quebec. It's past Wakefield. Anyway, so there was a lane, a shaded lane that went like this, and it went up, and the cottage was over there. And in this shaded lane, one day I was just walking through the dirt road, and I look up, and I see about 20 feet in the air on a tree, a cedar tree. There's a branch, and it's going along, and then I see it's got a knob, like a great big knob like this of knots, and I can see it. And then the branch goes on, and I go, wow, I've always wanted that. I could make a club out of that or something. So somehow I managed to climb this tree. I was, in my middle teens at this point. I think at that point I was already living on my own, so I had to be 17 at the very least, 17 or 18. But nonetheless, I cut that branch down. I climbed up there, cut it down, and brought it down, and it was covered in bark and everything, but it was pretty cool. And the piece I had, it was about this long, not 3 feet, 2.5 feet, maybe, something like that. Maybe a little bit less than that, but around there. And it was about this thick in diameter. I gauged that about 2.5 inches or something like that. And it went out like this, and it had an angle, or maybe not that sharp, an angle like this, and then the knob was there. The knob was about this big, and I'd worked on this thing, cleaned off all the bark, covered it in oil, and got it looking really nice and everything. And I was quite proud of it for a while, but I drilled a hole at the bottom and attached some type of a leather strip so that you could hold on to it or something like that, make it look like some type of war hammer or something like that, or some tool or some weird thing anyway. Certainly not something you encounter normally. So then the story veers away from the cottage. This branch ended up sitting in my room somewhere. I'd pull it out every now and then, and we'd fool around with it at parties and whatnot, but nobody got hurt, nothing got broken. So that was probably the best part. Then I got a job at the Riverside Hotel, and this was in Vanier in Ottawa, just off of Ottawa, across the bridge, and you came into Vanier, and the hotel wasn't far from that bridge. It was a rundown hotel. It had a hotel, a restaurant, and a small bar, a tavern. So it had, and it had an entertainment hall, where they have and this was one of my first jobs. I got it because I was trying to figure out, how did I get that job anyways, how do you get jobs when you're a kid? And that one was a cousin, older cousin, big family. He worked there as a manager, the general manager. And he was a no-nonsense guy, a fairly small guy, really. I think 5'6" or something like that. And but authoritative, he had that look, and he could control a situation in just a second. I remember him running up into I don't even know what the situation was. I just remember him running up these stairs and suddenly standing there, going, what's going on here? Anyway, he was a neat guy. But through him, I had gotten this job at the Riverside Hotel. And I remembered the day I went in for my interview. I didn't have a shirt, a proper-looking shirt, So I got one from my dad. And at the time, I was a scarecrow, really thin. And my dad's shirts were fairly big, much bigger than for me. And the arms, they hung down to here, and it was all loose and everything. So I had bunched it all behind my back and tied it up and everything, so enough that it would hid the fact that the neck was pretty big, and I wore a jacket so you couldn't tell that the arms were all hanging underneath, you know. Anyway, I got the job. I think that was a foretold conclusion. I could have gone there without dressing up, and that might have worked just as well. Nonetheless, while I was working there, I ended up moving around and having a bunch of different jobs. I worked in the restaurant, but I didn't really like the restaurant stuff. There's a bunch of ridiculous stories, but that's the Riverside Hotel, a bunch of memories. I just want to focus in on this one. So for the purpose of this, at some point, I started working at the front desk. And my first job at the front desk that I got was the nighttime job, the night shift. And, you know, the night shift isn't really great. You know, no matter what, you get quite tired in the middle. And I've got a creative mind. It's imaginative. And sitting there for 8 hours, bored out of your skull, very few things happen in an evening. Sometimes they did. But I ended up getting up to a lot of nonsense. And at some point, I had gotten worried about what if some guy shows up and attacks me tries to steal my money. And proof in point, the guy who had been working night shift before me, they had been robbed at gunpoint, and he'd been hit in the head with a shotgun, and he'd been forced to try to open the safe, and he didn't know the combination. None of the front desk clerks knew it, so we couldn't open it. He couldn't open it. That's why they hit him with the shotgun, took the cash, and took off. So that's, you know, I knew another guy, my friend Juan, who worked night shift, and he said some guy came around and he was practicing boxing, and he says, I just took the guy and I just started punching him in the stomach, just like I was doing a punching bag, and he dealt with that guy. But I'm not a boxer. I'm not a puncher. I was scared. I mean, I'm worried. You know, what if some guy shows up and he tries to rob me? What am I going to do? And I thought about that branch. See, we're back to it. I hadn't forgotten about it. So I thought about this branch, and so I brought it in, and I had it stuck in there was the front desk had this counter, a short counter about 5 feet long. There was an entrance where you could slide in on the side there, and then you had your chair over here, and the switch desk for the phones for the different rooms was right there, and you'd sit at this chair here. And I got tons of stories about that chair and that front desk and the jokes I played on customers or tenants. Anyway, it's just endless Riverside Hotel memories. But not to get lost in the pile. So there was this little, well, to finish the description of the hotel there, the front desk, you had that 5 foot long desk here, 2 feet wide, and on the back there was another desk, and it went the whole length. And at the end of that desk, there was a wall that went right out to where the desk started, and it had a full bunch of cubbyholes, just slots. And between that counter at the back and there was a space. It was just about this wide, and I could stuff the branch in there with a knob sticking out, and it was generally unnoticed, sitting in the corner there, but easy to reach. And it actually happened that I used it once to protect myself. And this is a side story, but it relates to the stick, to the branch, so let's talk about that, right? So this guy and this girl came in, and it was for a shack up. I don't know if you understand the term shack up, but it was a common term we used in the hotel business. And our bosses, our owners, the owners, they didn't want to make money. It was just a money-losing proposition. It was their money sink, so they could not have a loss to declare of some sort. And so they didn't really want to rent to local residents looking to shack up with someone, which is ridiculous because that's just about the main business you get in a small hotel, you know. So I'm can't remember how many floors we had. I think we had three or four floors, maybe five. Four floors, I'm going to say. Yeah, I think it's 4 floors. Anyway, so this couple had come in, and they were pissed off, you know, that they couldn't rent. The guy was pissed off. And, you know, in front of his girl, was going to have a little bit of good time with her. And here's the stupid front desk clerk saying, no, you can't get a room. You know, you can imagine it piss him off. I could understand it, you know, but that was my position. I had to take it. I didn't have any choice. I guess I could have. I could have rented it, and the boss would never have cared. But anyways, so what I had said to him, I can't, where do you live? And he said, Vanier. And I said, well, I can't rent to you because we don't rent to people from Vanier. And I pointed at this list that we had. Unfortunately, Vanier wasn't written on that list. And so this guy, he's really angry. And he pushes his way. He comes around the counter, which is a straight out no-no. And, you know, I'm a small guy. This guy was pretty big. And he comes and he looks at the list and he reads and he sees that Vanya's not on it. And he's just building himself. He's screaming, you know. He says, Vanya's not on this. You're lying to me. You know, Vanya's not on this. You know, and I can see, you know, like he's got 2 more of those at a louder tenor, you know. And then he's going to punch me or something. You know, something's going to happen here. So desperate, I reach behind and I pull out my branch. So, you know, this is going to be my branch, you know, not as imposing as the real thing, but, you know, and I stand there, you know, I said, get the hell out from behind here, you know, and I'm brandishing this thing, and I'm going like this, you know, like this, trying to look menacing or something like that. And his eyes, I remember that, for surely in memory time, you know, the memory exaggerates a bit, but I remember his eyes going big as saucers, and as they were focused on the knob on top of that branch. I mean, it was a good sized knob, like this big branch, you know, and they're going like a caveman or something like that. It's just ridiculous. And he goes, get up from behind here, and he goes, whoosh, and you know, it's like 1 second later he's back on the other side of the counter, and and he goes, you going to use that thing? And by that time I had collapsed in the chair, because collapse is the word. My legs were shaking. I was just anyways. So I'm sitting there and I go, I don't want to hit you with that thing. I just want you to go. I can't rent a room to you. And he left. And so that was my real-time adventure of using this stick, this branch. I never named it. You would have thought, eh? Had it for years. So sitting there, going back to sitting there at the night shift with this branch sitting in the corner over there. And you remember I said that there was these cubby holes on the side here, these slots. They're about this big each, you know, about foot by foot. Maybe to put in tenants things, you know, purses and whatever, anyways. But that's not what it was used for. And there's a little curtain drawn across it. But we got these loads of telephone books. Sorry, I'm thinking about this branch. Anyway, so we got these load of telephone books, and I'm sitting there at night. Sorry, I'm starting to laugh. Anyway, so they had changed the phone books in the rooms, and there was a pile left of spares just in case some got lost. And there was a lot of spares. There was a lot of rooms, and so these cubby holes were filled with these phone books. I mean, not much you can do with phone books, you know. Not much you can do with a branch either, you would think. But somehow, sitting there lonely by myself at night, wailing away the hours, la-di-da, sitting in my chair, you know, picking at it, you know, bored out of my skull, sometimes a little stoned. So I end up connecting the two. I asked myself this question, and it's a wonder, you know, like you wonder, where did this question come from? I don't know. I cannot really explain it. I can't even formulate how I would have gotten the trail that would have led me there. You know what I mean? You know, sometimes the memory's just not that good, I guess. Anyway, but I connected the two, and I said to myself, I asked, how would it be possible to hit a phone book and split and split the cover, like with the knob of the branch. So now the whole mechanics in my mind, like it was no sooner said, no sooner thought than done, right? I pulled out a phone book, and they were pretty thick. I guess they were about this thick or something. I remember at the time they had the yellow pages and the white pages, so probably a good thick 1.5 2 inches. It's amazing. Anyway, I realized that my first hit failed. Okay, like I smashed the thing. And this is the whole thing you got to picture. I smashed the thing, Where did I smash this? Well, I'm at the front desk of a hotel, right? Sitting by myself, and glass windows on the side here, glass door. There's a glass window there, so people conceivably could be seeing me. But at 2 or 3 in the morning, who's going to be looking, Who's going to be out there to look? Anyway, the thought didn't really enter my head. I just thought it just takes a second, right? Just give it a shot. Put the phone book on the counter, on the front counter, and I'd stand the right distance. I'd gauge it, stretch it out, and see where it would hit. I'd turn it, because remember the branch had this little angle like this on the knob. So I'd turn it so that knob was sticking down. And in my mind, I imagined being on using an axe and chopping a log or something like that, right? And eventually, my first attempt, whoop-bam, it didn't work. I did not split the cover. It surprised me. I thought for sure one of those knobs, could do something, but I couldn't do it. So in the end, perseverance, boredom. I practiced a fair bit, and eventually I got the trick. And there was a trick. One was the branch itself, because it had a, when you turned it, and it had you turned it so it was aiming down with that angled piece. At the end was where the branch would keep going, and there was a little piece that stuck out, and it had a good knob. So having a knob that had a bit of depth to it was pretty important to be able to smash this cover. I realize this is so important to discuss this. How do you split the phone book cover? But you go ahead and try it and see if it's easy. Anyway, so I realized eventually that you have to give it your all. Right, when you are going to smash this cover, there's all this padding of the phone book underneath it, and the thickness had a lot to do with it. There's a lot of paper there to absorb the shock, and to just split the top cover, man, you had to really hit it precisely and hard and fast. So the only way to do it was to actually jump up in the air. For me, I would literally go like this, and as I'm doing this, I would, in the downswing, I would jump up in the air, so all of my body weight, everything I had, came down to this little spot on the tip of the branch, bam, onto that cover. And bam, it was the sound, eh? Bam! Just a hell of a sound. Oh, shit. Anyway, and I split the cover. You'd get a little depression, and there would be a rip in the phone book cover, So, no sooner had I started having success, I kept doing it. But it wasn't enough, right? I was brimming to tell people about my newfound skill. So, I think the first guy I mentioned it to was one of our tenants. They were strippers that were coming in from all sorts of places. And this was a guy who, he didn't actually strip, just he'd go down to maybe his really tiny underwear. But he did sort of dance routines, and they were fairly sophisticated. One I remember he did was like Charlie Chaplin or something like that. Anyway, so I end up he was sitting down. There was a sort of the front desk was here, and there was sort of a sofa right over there, and another one over there. And he was sitting there. It was late at night, and I was just chatting with him. And I said, "Hey, can I show you something interesting that I figured out?" And he said, "What?" And I pulled out a phone book and I put it on the thing, and then I pull out this thing, and I just go, whap, bam, putting my all into it, jumping up in the air and everything. Bam! Like counter, boom! And he burst out laughing. I mean, he did not expect it, and he thought it was the most funny thing. Anyway, so somehow word got around. Okay, the managers never heard about it, but some of the staff did. It got around, and in particular, there was this guy. He worked at the tavern downstairs, and he was a big guy. We'd had a little bit of a connection because he had a motorcycle, and I had a 350 Kawasaki, and it was a piece of shit by the time I met him. It ran terrible. And he had a 900 Honda or something like that, a thing that just drove like a bat out of hell, and I couldn't keep up. There's a story in there about that. I wonder if I should tell you that story. That's going too off base, because that is a hilarious story. The heck, why not? Why not? I'm babbling about stories, going on a little bit of a trail of thought here. So we were driving on motorcycle to my dad's cottage. In fact, it relates to the cottage. We're back to the cottage story, right? We're heading towards the cottage. And we're about halfway there. We're on this road, and there's these motorcyclists. And we're going up this road. It's on an incline, but the incline has a curve down, and you can't see after that. And because of that, it's two solid lines. There's no passing there. It's a dangerous place to pass. If you meet a car right at the top, not know about it, you're dead. But these two motorcycles, we were driving on our two motorcycles. We were following some caravan or some sort, like some car. And then these guys, we knew they were behind us at some place, but they passed in the place where there's no passing lane. And we saw them, zoom, go like this in front of us. And then we also saw a cop car go zoom like this. And the cop car stopped all four of us. We knew why he had stopped the other two, because they had passed on this no passing area. And I was the last one, right? He started going with those first two guys, gave them tickets, and he was walking, and he walked to my friend, and I was the last one, right? And I was listening to him talk, and of course we were in Quebec, and in Quebec the cops talk French, and you're lucky if they well, I'm not going to say anything about if they can talk English or not, but this guy did not talk a lot of English, and he was going from person to person and issuing the tickets, and he was to my friend, and I knew my friend had not passed that place, that car in the no passing lane, and somehow, no matter what my friend said, he got a ticket. And then he came to me, and I'm bilingual, I'm originally French, so when he came to me, he says, "Did you pass that car?" And I said, "Qui? Moi?" Which translated into English is "who, me?" And he says, "You're French, t'es français." And he says, "No," he looks at me, and he goes, "No, you didn't pass that guy." And then he leaves me, and he doesn't give me a ticket. And my friend had gotten the ticket, and it was great. It was great. It was absolutely great, and it pissed him off to no end. So there was a little bit of a piss off in there, a little bit of an issue that he had with me. So he heard about this, right? And like I said, he's this big guy. We're back at the front desk with the branch, right? Getting the fucking phone books. Remember that, right? So he comes out and he says, "I hear tell that you can do the phone books, And so I'm 5'8", okay? So and at the time I probably weighed 140 pounds, 145 pounds, maybe if I was wet. Not big. And I showed him, whoop, bam! And he goes, "Let me try." So he grabs it, and he towers over me. He had to be, I don't know, like a good 6 inches taller than me. He was very tall, big guy too, and he takes this thing and bam, he hits a phone book. And by the way, I was using a lot of phone books through this process, right? And every one of these phone books had these rips on it, it was starting to get hard to find ones that were intact. I would have to soon end this fun. Anyway, so he hits the thing and he doesn't break it, because like I tell, it takes some skill to do this. So anyway, it pissed him off. It pissed him off to no end and became a challenge. It was his challenge, but I was always happy to be able to demonstrate my skill and crack that cover unerringly every single time. And I didn't give him a clue of how to do it. It was up to him. And the fact that he was bigger than me pissed him off to no end, that he couldn't break the thing. He figured with his strength and everything he should be able to do it, but it wasn't really strength. Strength played a role, but it wasn't really strength. It was just doing it right. And you have to use an axe. And that's the whole point behind it. If you haven't used an axe and tried to chop a resistant log of some sort, you're really not going to be able to succeed as well as somebody who has in cracking phone book covers. So he come back out, and word got around in the tavern that he couldn't do it, and that he would come out, okay, every day, and sometimes in the middle of the day, he would come out and he would say, all right, time to do it again here. I got to do it. I figured it out. I'm going to do it, And he'd hit it. He wouldn't crack it, and I'd hit it, and I'd crack it. Piss him off again, and off he would go. Oh, shit, what a fun game. Until the day where he arrives with a friend. Probably some customer. I think that's what it was, some customer. I hadn't seen him before. And this guy, he was shorter, a bit excitable. And he's standing there and he watches me do the bam and him do the bam, and then he goes, hey, let me try, And so he grabs the thing and he goes like this and he goes bam, and he misses the phone book and hits the counter, and he pocks a hole this big in the counter. Seconds later, he's gone. They just out the door. He's gone. And I'm left standing there with the hole in the counter. And then I start looking at the counter a little more closely. And, it was a piece of plywood that had been nailed to the walls of the counter. And then they had put the countertop material over it. And everywhere there was a nail, the nail had popped up and had broken the countertop. And there's a whole ripped thing like this in the hole. It wasn't on the side someplace, where nobody would see it. It's right in the middle of the counter. You had to place that phone book in the right place, So the next day comes. This was a night shift. So it was okay until morning. I went home. I didn't say a word. Until I was called into the manager's office, and I was Clancy, and it's a bit of a soft ending to the whole thing, because I don't really remember. He must have said something like, "You're going to have to pay for that," but I remember he didn't even look me in the face. I walked in there and I knew what it was about. And he's standing at his desk, and he's standing up, and he's looking down, and his desk had a front that was high, and then there was a desk behind it, and he's standing up, but he's looking down, shuffling paper or something like that, and he goes, "Matt, what happened to the counter?" And all I remember is fumbling, verbally fumbling, just I was some axe and some goof, he hit the counter with a stick, a branch, and he broke the. He was just trying to never a mention of any phone book issue covers issues or anything. So he must have said, "You're going to have to pay for it." But it was never fixed. I never had to pay a penny. And it remained like that until I left that place. I was busted. This busted counter. This permanent memory of this stick, of this branch, and this idiot. This idiot! Anyway, so that's generally my story, my memory about this branch. I mean, I know it goes all over the place, but what the hell, eh? That's what memories are for. Just to be able to go down the road. The branch itself, one day I ended up doing some hit of some sort, and it just broke. At the twist where it went down, it broke, it snapped. It was cedar, though it was fairly thick. It was cedar, and cedar's not the strongest wood, quite soft. And I'm surprised it lasted as long as it did, just because it was an original branch form. I hadn't altered it. I guess the grain lasted for as long as it did, for all the torture I put it through. Anyway, that's the story of my branch. I don't even have it to show you. I guess you'll just have to imagine it. That's my story for today, and I'm going to let you go now, and see your next memory.